Hello ladies and gentlemen, my name is Aubrey McGillian with Everneth Gaming News, a segment where we talk about all things news related in the gaming industry. This week, World of Warcraft. Specifically, what are we losing and gaining in the transition between Legion to Battle for Azeroth this August? As a little bit of a primer, Legion was a kind of skeptical expansion when it first started. The idea of using a single weapon over the course of the entire expansion was loved by some and by others approached with a cautious optimism. Legendaries, on the other hand, something that originally was something only for the dedicated few who would see a giant quest chain through to its conclusion, became widespread and easily obtainable, something that was heavily controversial. However, now that we're heading into Battle for Azeroth, the fact that people are losing their artifacts and will no longer be able to level them up with them is a point of contention. Obviously, it must be said that every new expansion we lose something and gain other things. But the real question here is, what are we losing? And do the benefits of what we're gaining in Battle for Azeroth outweigh the losses in the transition? Well, for one, we're getting Warfronts, which are 20-man, player versus environment, large-scale cooperative game modes, meant to represent that whole battle between the Alliance and the Horde. It's more or less inspired by the RTS roots of World of Warcraft and Warcraft 3, where you have people who have a lieutenant leading the group. The players will be responsible for creating outposts, securing resources, setting up supply lines, and training troops to push forward and conquer the enemy. The main difference from its Warcraft 3 roots, however, is that the Warfronts in Battle for Azeroth will have you playing as a boots-on-the-ground grunt, going alongside your troops and other players to push back the enemy, much like we had in Ashran and Warlords of Draenor and Wintergrasp in Wrath of the Lich King. However, Warfronts are not just focused towards the people who like to go toe-to-toe with other players, as people who play in the PvE or player versus environment field will find that this could be worth their time as well. Should you and the rest of the Legion you are commanding in your Warfront succeed in destroying the enemy stronghold, you'll have access to special outdoor content, like world bosses, the Lion's Roar and Doom's Howl, and other things like rare spawns. Of course, starting up a Warfront is similar to the way the Broken Shores buildings worked. You had to contribute a certain amount of resources, and then those buildings would be up for 3 days, giving you access to mage towers and other content that you could do that you otherwise would not have access to. With Warfronts, it's somewhat the same. You have to build up a certain amount of resources to trigger a Warfront. Once you have enough, you launch that assault, and the team that wins that Warfront will control the assaulted base, for example, Stromgarde or Arathi Highlands, for example, and then you have access to those really nice outdoor rewards. That's not all you get, though. If you contribute to the battle, you also get a nice little bit of a gift. A little bit of Azerite power for your Heart of Azeroth, and some reputation for the two factions that unlock both the Mag'har Orcs with the Honorbound, and the Dark Iron Dwarfs with the 7th Legion. Moving on to the Heart of Azeroth, a unique item that's been kind of replacing the artifact weapons in BFA. The Heart of Azeroth is a unique rarity neckpiece that is given to us by Magni Bronzebeard at the beginning of Battle for Azeroth, and will unfortunately be replacing those precious artifact weapons. It will serve as the focal point of our progression, much like the artifact weapons did, and when in proximity to Azerite, or the lifeblood of the planet, it will absorb that essence, becoming even stronger, which the players will then be able to use to awaken abilities in their armor. You can see some of the examples on screen with the little radial. The abilities are tied to the item that they're unlocked on. For example, some items might have traits that other items might not. And of course, you're not wasting any of that precious Azerite, as when you switch over to a new piece of armor that qualifies, it will just move the power over from the other piece to your current piece of equipment. Moving on, we also have Island Expeditions, which are a unique 3v3 PvP battle against the other faction, the Horde or the Alliance, respectively. It offers a high amount of playability, and you can even face off against AI in search of Azerite and other treasures. These Island Expeditions are unlocked after you complete the War Campaign at max level, so 120, and thankfully you won't have to go through on all of your alts because this is an account-wide unlock, so just do it on your main and you have it for all your little alts to level up on these Island Expeditions. And here's where we see something that is actually quite enjoyable. See, Bloodborne, the From Software title that most people liked or most people hated, had a system of chalice dungeons, which were procedurally generated dungeons. That basically procedurally generated means that they were constantly the same. If you went back in on a fresh character, exact same as they were when you went through originally. However, here's where Battle for Azeroth gets this kind of thing right. Instead of procedural generation, it's random generation. For example, I could go through 5 different island expeditions, and each one could be different with different enemies, different Azerite nodes, quest givers, consumables, shrines, capture points, and so much more. Now, this isn't just going to be you on your own on this little island. 3 people of the opposing faction will also be competing for the same resources, and the first team to reach 6,000 Azerite wins. The new thing is that while you're racing the enemy team, Blizzard has introduced a much smarter AI for the opposing faction's NPCs. So say you're playing against a mage, they'll try and keep the distance and keep you from getting in range. If it's a rogue, they'll try and use stealth to sneak up on you and stun you and kind of pick you off one by one. And the AI also comes within 3 difficulties: normal, heroic, and mythic, which affects how difficult the AI is. Think things like League of Legends and the versus AI difficulty. Of course, if you don't like the idea of fighting against bots or AI or NPCs, whatever you want to call them, you can also choose a PvP mode to go up against 3 other players instead. Outside of all of the interesting news that we've covered so far, we are also gaining access to the Dark Iron Dwarves and the Mag'har Orcs for the Alliance and Horde respectively. The Dark Iron Dwarves kind of have a sordid history with the player base. They were the ones that raised Ragnaros the Fire Lord, accidentally or intentionally is still unknown, but they will be siding with the Alliance, whereas the Mag'har Orcs will be siding with their green-skinned Orcish brothers from Kalimdor, because Orc power. The Dark Iron Dwarves and the Mag'har Orcs are both unlocked in similar ways to each other. The only difference is the reputation. Basically, you have to get an achievement where you complete the entire war campaign for Battle for Azeroth, and then you have to get exalted with one of 2 factions. For the Dark Iron Dwarves, it's the 7th Legion, and for the Mag'har Orcs, it's the Honorbound. Now, of course, we can't exclude the other 2 allied races that are coming in the future, the Zandalari Trolls for the Horde, and the Kultirian Humans for the Alliance. The Zandalari serve a God King Rastakhan and will no doubt expand on the nicer side of the Zandalari Trolls that most players have never even seen before, and the Kultirian Humans kind of embody that naval, kind of seafaring, strongman aspect that you would see in like a circus, for example. BFA promises to be fun, but I've only told you about what we're getting. We're losing something that most people really, really, really love. The one-of-a-kind artifact weapons that, spoiler alert, are being used to seal the corruption of Sargeras' sword. Now, what are we gaining from that? Not a whole lot. They're basically being used as bag space or bank slot space, and that's kind of where they're going to stay. And if you haven't gotten your Mage Tower appearances before the pre-patch hits, that is most unfortunate because you will not be able to obtain them after that point. However, you will still be able to obtain the Balance of Power, the PvP, the Hidden, and the upgraded variant of your basic artifact weapons as skins, which you can then transmog over other existing weapons. The artifact weapons disappearing or leaving us as a main progression point for good will have to be something that people inevitably get over and kind of settle in their heads that they're gone for good, because Ian Hazzikostas at BlizzCon, before Legion came out, even announced that the artifacts were somewhat temporary weapons. And while it's easy to look at the new druid forms and the new druid animations and all of the sweet looking spell animations that people like warlocks are getting and things that hunters are getting, looking at all the new model updates and all the new possible transmog ideas, it's still going to be difficult for people to forget the good old days of the artifact weapons. Thank you all for tuning into this segment tonight. I have been Aubrey McGilling, and I hope you will tune in next week for another segment of Everneth Gaming News.